Time slip at the Pentagon. I work in the Pentagon. Considered one of the most top secret locations in the country. You wouldn't think this if you ever took the Pentagon tour. Yes, there is a tour that you can take if you ever want to visit. We have hundreds of visitors every day. We even have a McDonald's and a Taco Bell in here. But don't let this fool you. There are places in here that you can never go. I've worked here for several years now. In that time, I may have traveled in every floor of the Pentagon. Even then, there are certain places that I don't have access to. Either I'm not part of that agency or I don't have the proper clearances. There are many hallways and byways that you see all over the place, and people who are walking in and around them. Nothing strange, just a bunch of civilians and government folk going about their daily duties. Except for one hallway. I work in the basement of the Pentagon, and traveling from the outside parking lot to my office was quite a walk. So, of course, I would try to find the shortest distance to travel. Well, I found another entrance by the more common one, and decided to take it considering it was actually on the first floor instead of the second. It was a common secure entrance. Guards watching from their desks. People coming in, showing their entry passes and being allowed inside. If you worked here for a while, you know all the little shortcuts and doors to get where you need to go, especially during the lunch hour, so I didn't find it strange to see some people coming through here, even construction people in hard hats. You just find these shortcuts over time. So I entered as normal, went through some double doors, and proceeded downstairs to the bottom floor towards my office. Traveling this way several times I noticed a side hallway in the basement along the more common route. Doing some navigation in my head, I figured that this hallway would actually cut across the more common route and I would be able to get to my office faster. Kind of like going through a side road instead of the highway to get to your house. So one day, I decided to take this side route and, as I figured, it did lead to my office. Yay for shorter walks. But there was something else that I noticed. Whenever I walked down this path, I would always walk by this other hallway. The entrance to this hallway was wide, and immediately narrowed to a smaller entryway. There were 2 guards standing on either side of the entrance facing out towards my hallway. They were dressed in military uniforms, or so I thought. As I took a closer look, I noticed that their uniforms weren't quite in step with the other military personnel in the building. It's at around this time that the military, as a whole, was going through their transition to newer uniforms. The Army and Air Force with their light green and grey digital pattern ACUS, you would have seen these if you watched any coverage of the Iraq War, and the Marines with their dark green and dark brown digital marpets, again, if you watch the news. These guys were wearing the old Army-designed BDUs. The thing is, they didn't have any military insignia on them. They didn't have the military branch name patch on their coat, they didn't have their unit patch on their right shoulder, no name patch, and they didn't even have the American flag patch. Nothing. When I took a look at their rank, which should be located on their collars, their rank was shaped like a bird. A colonel? No, a colonel wouldn't be standing guard, and these guys don't even look old enough to have such high rank. What the hell? Not only that, but they didn't look like regular military either. For one, their posture wasn't normal. Usually, if a military man was standing guard, he would be either standing at attention or at parade rest. But these guys were standing there with their hands at their sides and their feet about shoulder length apart, they didn't move 1 inch either. They just stood there like statues. Secondly, their haircuts were not within military regulation. It wasn't incredibly long, but it definitely wasn't military-style short either. No shaved sides or short top. Plus, they also wore utility belts around their waists. Usually this is worn when you have to carry a water canteen for an outdoor exercise that the military would conduct from time to time. But these guys had small, rectangular pouches all around. Kind of like the ones you would carry mace or pepper spray. It gets stranger. For several days, I would walk by and see these guys standing guard. On some days, I would come into work early, or I would stay at work longer to finish an assignment and leave for home later, but I would always see only these two guys standing there. Are they there for 12 hours? Every day? That's not possible. They would have to switch guards sometime. I had to find out what they were about. So one day, I went through my regular route and I stopped by the guarded hallway. But when I stopped, I noticed that the guys weren't looking at me. They were just staring straight ahead. They didn't even look when I turned to face them. "Excuse me," I asked. "What agency are you guys assigned to?" No answer. "Hello?" Nothing. I took a step forward into the entry of their hallway. That's when both of them turned their heads and their gaze towards me. So I stopped and looked back at them. "Who are you guys assigned to?" I asked again. "Don't you guys get tired just standing here?" Nothing. "Where does this hallway lead?" I pointed, taking another step forward. That's when I noticed their right hands slowly moving up towards their utility belts, but stopping before getting there. So I stopped and took 2 steps back to my original position, and their hands lowered. "Okay. Well, I'll just be on my way then." They just stood there staring at me, never changing their blank expression. So I walked, hurriedly, towards my office. The whole time feeling like someone was watching me. The next day, still being thoroughly creeped out, I was walking my regular route. But as I was heading towards my side hallway to the office, it wasn't there. I was staring at a wall. What the hell? Did I make a wrong turn? No. This is the right way. Only my hallway was now blocked. A wall was hastily built where the entrance was supposed to be. It was like one of those plaster walls that you see whenever construction was going on in a building. Are they doing construction? I would have at least seen a notice during my many walks through here. But there wasn't any. I walked the common route to the other end of my hallway, and there was a plaster wall on that end too. Confused and curious, I decided to call a friend of mine in the Pentagon renovation office to see if there was any work orders planned in my hallway. I gave him the approximate area, and he said he couldn't immediately find anything, so he would contact me later if he did. Later that day, he said he still didn't find any work orders. Out of curiosity, I asked him what offices were in that area. He checked and said he had no idea of any offices there. Several days passed, and that wall was still there. I walked by staring at it, wondering what was going on inside. I was walking into work at around the 10th day, again thinking about the wall and the hallway. Only this time as I walked by, I saw that the hallway was open. There's no wall. I immediately walked inside to see what had happened. As I got to the area of where I would meet my statuesque friends, nobody was there. Nobody was guarding the entry to the hallway. I looked down the now unsecured passage and peered inside. The hallway seemed to make a sharp left-hand turn, and from there I didn't see where it led. So I did what any curious man would do. I walked into the hallway. I walked about 30 paces until I reached the left turn. I looked to my left. And there was another wall. That's it. Just another wall. But this one seemed to fit in with the rest of the walls around the hallway. Not hastily built, unlike the plaster walls that met me in the days prior. I turned and quickly went back to my office. I still work there, but to this day, I don't know where that hallway used to lead. Stay paranoid, my friends.